Where can you get all of these progressive shows? The Young Turks post-game, aggressive progressives, old school, behind the scenes, damage report, no filter, rebel headquarters? Oh, right, by becoming a TYT member. Click the link in the description box below and you get all of that today.
Data from multiple national studies show that white Americans have been apparently relatively rapidly shifting their views on race and gender to match up with their candidates since the 2016 election, rather than shifting their party identification or ideology in response to their views on these topics, which is sort of interesting, a little bit complicated, but we'll explain what is meant there. So for instance, a Cornell University study found that Trump and Clinton voters changed their views on controversies like the Black Lives Matter movement to match their candidates' views. The largest changes in views of race and gender occurred among white liberals. Their perceptions of racial and gender discrimination increased, their feelings towards minorities improved, and their support of policies aimed at increasing diversity like affirmative action and allowing more immigration rose. Now, so that was mainly for white liberals. They became more tolerant on these various things. It was a lesser effect on conservatives, but it was seen as well. That it wasn't just that they went looking for candidates that matched their views on race and gender, but that after choosing to support Donald Trump, their views on these issues became less tolerant over time. And in both of these cases, both with the conservatives and with the liberals, those effects are still being seen in surveys going on up until today.
This isn't hugely surprising to me. I mean, right, this is what we know about psychology and confirmation bias and how you make your choice and then you sort of dig in cognitively and backfill with rationales. But also what I think is important to note here, and it's somewhat apropos of our previous conversation, is look, if you've been saying, as a lot of us have, that for 60 plus years, the bread and butter of the Republican Party, to an extent the Democrats too, Bill Clinton did it, Hillary Clinton did it, but by and large, the bread and butter of the Republican Party has been a reliance on dog whistle politics, racial dog whistle politics, to deliberately, albeit in a hands-off-ish appearing kind of way, stoke racial fear and resentment in order to gin up fear and resentment for a white voting base. If you say that they're doing that, and we can look at specific examples, Nixon, Reagan, et cetera, obviously Trump. Then in addition to that, but when you say, well, look, this is that kind of rhetoric, that kind of politics is going to have an effect. Well, this is the effect it has. It makes that voting base ostensibly more racially biased. Yeah. And what's interesting to me is that can't necessarily be true at the same time you then say, well, everybody who voted for Trump's just racist, because they were a product of. I'm not saying we let them off the hook for their biases, and I don't, but they are a product of this systemic political strategy, generation-long strategy on the part of the Republican Party to make them that way.
Yeah, and I guess, like you said, it shouldn't be too surprising. Like if Fox apparently thinks that we can get people focused on how scary immigrants are, I mean, they are training their viewers over time. To some extent, it's self-selecting, but it's also a bit of training. I want to add in gender, and then I want to explain briefly why I think this is important and why this should give us a little bit of hope, even though it seems so dark. So survey experiments and a panel study show that Trump's comments about women made his supporters more willing to both tolerate and express sexist views. Those changes were also still evident in 2018. Meanwhile, Democrats' beliefs that gender discrimination is a big problem has increased since Trump's election. So the reason I think this is important, although not that surprising when you really think about it, is there is a belief that Donald Trump is nothing but a symptom of what's going on in America. That America was bad in all of these ways, and the system was so bad, and the system was rigged in various ways, and so that gives birth to a Donald Trump. And if that is the belief, then some people use that to justify, well, then we don't have to do anything about Donald Trump, we have to just fix the underlying problems. But the problem is if individual candidates like Donald Trump, although not exclusively Donald Trump, are able to individually make people more awful in these various ways, then we can't just take our sights off Donald Trump, and we do have to care about the expressed views on things like religion, race, gender of individual candidates. In terms of hope, this means that hypothetically, if we get rid of Donald Trump and he's replaced by someone who we might disagree with almost as much on many of the policy issues, if Mitch McConnell becomes the candidate, or Marco Rubio, or whoever, who do not express such constant vitriolic views on race and gender, then hypothetically, the Republican base might be a little bit better on those issues as well. And in a country as as split on these issues as we are, I think we could use any move in the right direction. I don't know, maybe that's me being naive, but it seems to be indicated by a number of different studies going on.
Yeah, I don't think though that you support certain people, certain candidates without having a prior, I don't know what level of like anti-brown, anti-black sentiment in just your bones.
I agree.
I don't believe that. And
I
so
agree.
I think maybe you found your people, and are able to be louder and be more comfortable. But this idea that like this country just became so divided, 4 years ago, it's ridiculous. And it's really cushy for anything that's going on right now to make you feel like hopeless. And then we have to cater to those people because we don't want them to be hopeless. Like if you take a look back at this country 60, 70, 80 years ago and see the fight that a lot of people around those times put in order to have us sitting here together right now, I think it's spineless to say that Donald Trump makes you hopeless. Like I just don't think that that's fair when you think about.
I'm saying looking out at America makes me a little bit hopeless. What I'm saying is that getting rid of Donald Trump, according to these studies, seems to like it might make people a little bit more tolerant on these issues if he is the one driving it, as this seems to indicate.
Can't we walk and chew gum at the same time? Can't we recognize that as a country, we are ostensibly founded? Look, we've always had lofty aspirations to the contrary, but we're founded as a country based on racial bias, hatred, misogyny, genocide, right? Like that is the core of our nation's history, and that is in a sense as baked into our bones as it is into our politics, into the air that we breathe. And the powerful thing is we all still have agency in whether we choose to exacerbate and inflame and enrage that tendency or try to appeal to our better angels, our better good, our better nature, our higher values, right? That's the paradox of this country. I think both can be true, right? But it's always been our story, and thank God we've always had people who fought against it.
Yeah.
But it matters, but it does say that leadership matters. It's not the only thing that matters. History matters, but leadership also certainly matters.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.